When you're outside, do you find that scenes are really hard to sort of nail down and simplify so you can actually capture what you imagine in your head? Well, today I'm going to show you this complicated scene and we're going to make it easy to capture. And all of this while sat outside in Bath, sketching with a coffee in front of me. What more could you want from a lovely weekend day? I'm using something really simple today, using my sketchbook and a sort of soft-nibbed Fude pen, which is just a couple of pound pen. It's really great using a pen like this because it gives us that instant, bold, big line. That means when we jump in, it gives us interesting, contrasting lines straight away. And it also forces us to simplify. It's too big and bold for us to get really stuck into the little details. Let's have a think though about this scene. Why is this scene tricky? Well, number one, we're outside, so although I'm showing you a still photo of it, obviously people are moving, the light is changing, the wind is blowing. The other thing is, oh my word, is there not a huge amount going on? I don't even know how many windows, different angles, there's a bit of a slope going up the hill. And then we've got these trees, these branches, which for me are probably the most difficult thing because they are flowing in front of the scene and kind of obstructing a lot and removing some of the ability to see the details. But how are we going to just simply cope with all of that? Well, it starts off with our normal processes. So what can we see? Draw that. So I'm starting off with the simple shapes that I can see. You can see literally there I've drawn a square at the top of the building, and that's literally what I can see. Behind this building at the front, which is the Boston Tea Party Cafe, we've got another building in the distance, and I can see where that intersects, and I can draw that in as a little rectangle. Then I'm just immediately going to dive into the scary bit, the tree, and I'm going to have this tree as a shape. And what is it? It's like a giant lollipop. It's got a little bit of texture, so I can do a tiny bit of hatching, but really we can actually just leave this tree as a bit of a bold negative space, at least now, and we can decide later how we apply colours to that. Next, we move past that. There are interesting shapes off to the right of the scene as well. One idea I had was to use this tree as a kind of frame for the scene. You could put it at the right-hand scene, but I thought that'd be cheating. That's too easy to just ignore some of the scene. But we do have to ignore some of the scene. When we look out, we see 180, 270 degrees of vision. So we need to remove some of that vision and focus down, like a photo focuses on a certain bit. A key part, therefore, is focusing your mind on what you are trying to capture. So for me, I want to capture these lovely trees. I want to capture that interesting building at the front that's between the two trees. And the rest is the background. The rest is needing just enough that it carries the bit I'm interested in. And we need to just focus on that a little bit more. In the outdoors, when we're sketching, urban sketching on plein air, we need to have this clear in our mind because we don't have a nice photo which has already removed all of the extra stuff. It's already removed all the extra vision. A thinking process behind this as well is the idea of, as we move away from the interesting bit, the bit that we're actually really interested in, we should lower the amount of detail and lower the contrast and make the lines less bold. So notice how out on the right, where my pen is now, the lines are less bold, there's far fewer details. In fact, I'm not actually adding anything to that building now. Instead, what I'm doing is there's a chap with his child sat on the sort of benches right in front of me. And I'm going to add them in as a foreground interesting element, just layering it on top. And this is also absolutely okay to do. It's okay to do in the studio and it's okay to do outside. It's okay to draw things on top of other things. I'm going to add in a series of very simple people here drawn on top of my old line work. This is a moving, alive scene. These people are moving, so I'm capturing them simply. And also they're moving, so I'm not going to put them in first because, after 5 seconds, they've moved somewhere else. I don't know exactly where I want them to be in my scene. Just a few little touches, bit of fiddling really, and now we can jump in with our colours. So I think one of the biggest challenges is these trees. So I'm going to be brave. I'm going to start with the trees. The trees are also kind of taking up that sky space that I would normally gravitate towards using. I'd normally gravitate towards having a big open sky. So instead of that, I'm going to use the trees as a kind of fluid sky type feel to give that same counterpoint to the less fluid geometric stuff going on with the man-made buildings. Just using a simple bit of a reddy brown and a teal colour into those trees to get the idea of wood and leaves. And then underneath I'm using some blue. This is actually a sort of a central primary blue, a bit like an ultramarine. But when it mixes together with that teal and that red, we get something quite neutral. And also the colours I'm using, they're handmade wood colours. They've got a lot of texture, so I get a lot of texture, a lot of granulation going on as well. I don't want to lose the sky completely, and what I'm sort of gently doing at the moment is filling in the big spaces. So I've basically painted around all of my objects, apart from the trees. I've painted the trees themselves, but other than that, I've painted around the buildings, and now having a little bit of contrast into the buildings where I see some shadow. The shadows I'm seeing are a little bit different to the reference because the light is changing constantly. So I'm having to choose which shadows I want. And that is another of the challenges of being outside. You can't just faithfully copy something because it will change. Not just will the people move, not just will the trees blow, but also the light will change. The colours will sometimes dramatically change, especially if we move from a sunny day to a less sunny evening. You can literally find the colours of buildings feel 1 minute red and the other minute brown, the next minute they almost feel black or blue. So lots of adaptation needed, and the longer we take, the more we're going to need to adapt as well, because the more things will change. One of my solutions to sketching outside when we're not feeling confident, when we don't bring a full setup, it's possible to bring a really dramatic full setup with us, but when we don't, one of my solutions is keep it simple. Just have a bit of fun and let things flow. And that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm not letting my colours do too much work. I'm not trying to colour the whole scene in. I'm trying to get enough tone to make my line work feel fun. And then on top of that, in a minute, we can add a bit more boldness, a bit more sort of clarity of colour, some real punches of colour. But I don't need to come outside and have my coffee and stress. I also don't want to paint for half an hour. My coffee will have gone cold. So I want this to be a part of my day, not taking over my day. At other times, I'll bring out loads of stuff. I'll bring out a full setup, get a tripod out, have a seat, bring loads of water. And then I'm not sketching so much as painting and drawing outside. And that's a different thing. And we can approach things differently. But most of the time, we don't have the luxury to do that. Maybe we do have the luxury, but it's a lot of faff. So instead, we do things like this. Simple, quick, fun, achievable. And fundamentally, that is the message for this video, is that how do you cope with a challenging scene outside? Well, make it your own and make it achievable. Just focus on what you actually want to achieve from the scene and achieve that. Another really good tip is that I like doing this outside and then bringing it home, and maybe at a later date you'll find another video from this scene, but I've sketched it and painted it from this sketch. This sketch needs to get the essence, the important bits of this scene down so that I can reproduce my memory of the scene, which is far more exciting to do than reproducing a scene from a photo. Reproducing it from a photo might be more accurate, and that might be what you're after. But for me, I'm after having a bit of fun and actually going, right, have this small sketchbook scene. How can I just have a heap of fun? How can I take this sketchbook scene, make it something more, make it something bigger? And that's what my sketchbook is for. Practice, memories, and later embellishment. Moving around, I've sort of adapted my normal process where I'd let my watercolours dry and then come and add another firmer layer of colour on top, more bold colours, as you'll often hear me say. And when I'm outside, I'll just be a bit more fluid, jumping around. Things often dry a bit quicker or a bit slower depending on the weather. And that means I can start layering up the bolder colours whilst one patch of the page is still wet. You can see there's a lot of water at the bottom of the page, but a lot of it's dried so much already that I can really just come back on top already. With that, I think we can cool my colours done, and you can see the most important part of the day, just having a little sip of coffee there. Then we can come back, and just like normal, this is the opportunity to apply some structure. The watercolours have had all sorts of fun on the page. I said I didn't want to do too much work, but they've kind of done all the work as well. They've just flowed and created texture. I've used a very minimalist palette, which doesn't really represent the natural aspects of this scene very much, but it is the colours I have with me. And so I have to do what I can do with my colours today. And then they've just created their own bit of magic. And now I respond to that little bit of extra structure, especially on key details. So now these people can start popping out. These shop fronts can start popping out. These trees, perhaps we can add bolder lines to in a moment. But certainly we can just find some of those shapes, those little light shapes which the watercolour has helped create. And we can add a little bit more of a punch to them. It's really important not to overdo this. We have a fun, light and loose sketch. We've got our idea on the scene. So we don't want to now start trying to imagine we can see and draw every single brick. I don't want to turn this into a cartoon by making lines really, really bold. And I don't want to make it feel overworked and scratchy and just less interesting by applying too much ink when this is a ink and watercolour urban sketch. We want the watercolours to be having their fun as well. At the very front, these people, I just feel like they want to jump off the page a bit more, and this bold line work at the front will really give you that effect where things just come forward. And that's pretty much the last thing I want to do, apart from sign it and say that I really did enjoy the Society Cafe. Wholly recommend it in Bath, and if you want to see more of my art, follow me, subscribe. So thank you everyone for watching my little sketching videos. If you enjoy my content, please do subscribe to my channel, because it makes me really, really happy. Thanks again.